In this webinar, we would be talking about future of work. We would be talking about future of human resource, and we would be talking about how do we see the decade ahead in human resource management. There is a lot that is changing. A lot has changed since pandemic hit the entire globe, and it has really acted as a catalyst in terms of organization breaking the shackles, the monotonicity with which the way things were happening, and we can see great acceleration in terms of how organization would change elements and things in their respective setups, and which certainly would change a lot of things in a lot of areas, including human resource. So the best that a HR professional who's currently working as a HR professional, or somebody who is aspiring to get into human resource, is to update what's gonna change, right? It's very, very important that we, all of us as HR professionals, are able to update ourselves and are able to foresee what would change in times to come, so that we are much, much, much better prepared to tackle and to plan and to execute our respective careers, right? So thank you everyone, everyone who's listening, and let's get to the topic of future of human resource. In this session today, we would be talking about multiple things. I would just first quickly check on some trends that are futuristic trends, and then I would talk about um, the present. It's important to understand the present a bit in terms of relating how things would shape up in times to come. So I would talk about the present of human resource and how in present things are evolving and changing. And then I'll talk about the new areas that would come in human resource, and new skills that would be required in human resource, and new roles that human resource would do. And then I would take an example of a vertical, of a domain, of a department within human resource, and show you how exactly, or what you can expect in terms of how exactly it would change, right? So my name is Animesh. I head the certification vertical for CHRMP, and I come with about 17 years of work experience. I have consulted number of Fortune 10, number of Fortune 500 companies in terms of with uh, setting up with HR processes, conducting HR audits, creating HR analytics structure, etc. And I have been associated with CHRMP since inception, and this webinar is brought to you by Certified Human Resource Management Professional.
Don't forget to press the like button and leave your comment. Share the video and subscribe to our channel for more HR-related content. To never miss a notification on our latest uploads, make sure you hit the bell icon.
Right, now let's get going. So the first trend that we are going to see is that there would be global workforce with mobile places and without language barriers, right? And this is something that is an eventuality, and it would happen sooner than what people think it can be like, right? So when we say global workforce with the mobile workplaces and without language barriers, if all this while we were thinking of MNC as a multinational company or organization where they have offices in different locations, you would see this definition of a national corporation change, because you would have so many organizations, big and small, who would be managing workforce remotely at multiple locations, right? And this with the way technology is changing, And if you just go ahead and if you have been following some tech blogs, etc., then you would realize that today, uh, if a speaker speaks in one language, you can have people sitting in 30 different places in this country with transcription of as the speaker is speaking, uh, 30 different translations available, right? Or more, maybe, right? So when we are talking about a global workforce, we are talking about people being able to communicate, people being, I'm sure there would be its own challenges, but this is something that is going to be one trend of the future, where there would be mobile workplaces, and this there would be a global workforce which organizations would look at creating without language barrier. And this is one area where human resource has to contribute a lot in terms of setting it up for organizations, right? The second trend that we're going to see in human resource management is AI based recruiting, right? To focus on eliminating bias and reducing errors. And this is something that's certainly going to happen. It's, as we talk, it's already happening, right? So and I would talk about this towards the end when I take an example, because I would be taking an example of how talent acquisition is going to change when we talk about future of work and future of human resource. But just to stick to this, when we talk about AI based recruiting, which is artificial intelligence based recruiting, uh, uh, we are talking about uh, uh, even if an interview is being conducted, uh, AI can gauge whether the person who's speaking, how the person is speaking, it can go about rating in terms of what element of truth or a lie is in that answer, right? Not only that, there are a lot of other things that's happening in AI. But as I said, that towards the end, I would be taking this very example of talent acquisition. I would be breaking it down for you in terms of understanding how exactly recruitment and talent acquisition going to change in times to come. So certainly, you can expect a lot to change in talent acquisition in times to come. In fact, one of the areas which would be hardest hit in terms of uh, uh, the change, the way things would change from traditional recruiting to modern recruiting, uh, uh, is talent acquisition, right? And a great element to this would be the role of AI and ML, which is artificial intelligence and machine learning, right? The third element that we need to talk in terms of human resource and a trend that we can go about seeing is that you would see a rise of individualized learning plans on interactive LMS with improved learner experience, right? And this is already being worked upon, and it's going to a different level. We have been talking about gamification, we have been talking about a lot of elements, but there would be a lot of competency based elements that would come in terms of very specific element that people want to learn. And rather than having an organizational learning plan where we are talking about nominations, etc., being done, uh, a great amount of learning for individuals and their personal growth and their skill development can be done in an individualized manner by leveraging technology. And this is something that's going to be another trend to watch out for in the HR space, right? You would also have the way the regular performance management system, the way it has been working, change. You would see continuous performance management with real-time feedback and review mechanism. To a great extent, things have already changed. The regular bell curve has been broken. Balanced scorecard uh, is being put across with the OKR methodology, and a lot of things are happening in those space. Again, as I said, technology would be a big disruptor. And when we are talking about global workforce and a mobile workforce, one trend to watch out would be how performance is tracked. And with a global and a mobile workforce, it would be very difficult with the regular traditional performance management systems to run. So you would see performance management being continuous with a lot of elements to track and implement how people have performed and how they have gone about doing things, right? So this is another trend that we need to watch out for. The trend five that we need to watch out for as HR professional is rise of super jobs that put the best of human skills and AI and ML ability for job success. So basically, a lot of super jobs that would evolve in human resource would be HR professionals working very closely with technology that would enable aspects at a workplace which ensures performance and creates job success, right? So basically, if as HR professionals we are told we when we interact, when we talk, when we tell the area why we have chosen human resource, one of the reasons a lot of HR professionals do give is that because they love interaction and they love communicating, etc., etc., etc. Yes, so you would see a lot more of communication with machines and computers and technology, and your input would help them better. Your input would help them create and implement elements that would redefine how work is done in times to come, right? So those jobs would be called super jobs. I would talk about few of super jobs today towards the end of the webinar as well. But this is something also another trend to watch out for, something that we all need to be aware of, and something that we certainly need to have attraction on, right? Okay, wonderful. Now, great. So I just wanted to quickly talk about few trends before I get into the topic of today. And as I said, the flow of the workshop would be where I would talk about what is present like and what would be future like, because that would bring us an entire element and understanding of how this entire journey is being taken care of, right? So this is something that I would be talking about in times to come. So hold on, if you have listened to this before in any of our interactions or sessions, but it's important. So I would want you to be there before I touch base with the way work is evolving for HR professionals and what future of work for HR professionals look like, right? Now, when we talk about human resource, I think in fact, I always tell this that HR is a 40-year-old term. Before that, it was personal management. Before that, it was welfare officer, etc., etc., etc. So there has a lot that has happened during last 40, 50 years, right? So if we quickly get into the journey so far in terms of evolution of human resource, we see three aspects of HR changing, right? The first aspect of HR changing is the functional perspective, right? But the first understanding that we can create about human resource is the functional understanding of human resource, and it's very easy because I always believe this is the best understanding of human resource that we can go about creating. And the functional understanding or the functional perspective of human resource is from an organizational perspective, what is HR, whether it's a core function or whether it's a support function. Anything which is in line with the nature of business of organization, anything which is earning revenues or running what gets the revenue for the organization is a core function, and anything which is supporting core functions or otherwise other elements that organization should have is a support function, right? So when we talk about human resource, what is it? Is it a core function or a support function, right? And when we talk about from a functional perspective, from an organizational perspective, how they are seeing human resource as a department, we realize that HR is the most diversified support function for any organization. Take any organization, for example, if we are talking about banking, if you're talking about soft IT companies, if we are talking about aviation, who are core functions in aviations or in hospitality, doctors and nurses who are working are the core function in in a healthcare, the general manager, the front office folks in hospitality is the uh, core function, or people who are selling, who are getting revenues for the organization, the insurance guy who's selling insurance, the banking account guy, or people who are getting uh, uh, earning revenues and income are all core functions. But when we talk about finance, when we talk about human resource, when we talk about facility management, when we talk about administration, these are all support functions, right? These are all support functions. And if you look at human resource, one of the most beautiful understanding of human resource is that it's supporting the entire employee life cycle, right? So from the time a person gets into the organization, which is recruitment or talent acquisition, to training, to performance, to compensation, uh, uh, to employee relations, to file management and personal management, and to a person leaving the organization, which is exit interviews, the entire journey of an employee within an organization is being supported by human resource. So if you look at the journey so far, we have been support function for an organization. We have been supporting the employee life cycle in an organization. So this is one understanding which is very, very important when we look at the present, right? That HR is a support function, right? In fact, when somebody says, what is the best definition of human resource? I always tell them not to look at Google and type what human resource management and human resource development, how they are different or how they are same. I always tell them that have a functional understanding of human resource, because that's the most practical way of looking at what HR department is, which is a support function, right? The second understanding that we need to have is from a process perspective, right? HR has evolved from a process perspective in a wonderful manner. And I'm just quickly covering this because of lack of time today. I have just 1 hour in hand, and you have and I want to make the best use of this 60 minutes. So when each of this topic is a session by itself. So when I say functional perspective, when I say process perspective, I can talk for it for an hour or two or more, right? So when we talk about process perspective, I think what human resource has seen from a process perspective is evolution from task-based process to a skill-based process to a competency-based process, right? Initially, when you look at how job descriptions were being written, how uh, training evaluation and training analysis forms and interview evaluation forms and performance management forms and compensation decisions, etc., were being taken, it was largely task based, right? And that evolved to skill based, where if somebody can be tested on a skill and an organization feels that it can be developed, then skill based HR, then they were hired or they were trained or they were rated, etc., and which led to skill based HR, isn't it, right? So if you look at Indian IT industry, for example, they were not really hiring only software engineers. They were hiring civil engineers, and they were hiring mechanical engineers, and they were hiring, or they are hiring, in fact, they are hiring production engineers, and they are hiring, in fact, BSc graduates and MSc graduates, because what they need is logical ability and analytical skills. If people have that skill, then they can be trained and they can be. So I'm just giving you an example in terms of how exactly HR processes and systems have changed, right? So and now the era is of competency based human resource, right? And competency based human resource is much more tangible, much more measurable, and much more giving strategic value to how HR processes and systems run. Um, and it has brought that element of HR department being taken much, much more seriously than ever before, right? And this has been the evolution of HR from process perspective. And it's important for us to understand this. And for example, if we are creating an interview evaluation form, or if we are creating uh, uh, performance management form, or if we are creating a training need analysis form, it would be very, very different if you look at from an aspect of, and HR runs on processes and systems and forms, etc., isn't it, right? So when we talk about a task-based form or a skill-based form and a competency-based form, it would be very, very different to have a look at a competency-based form. In fact, I always say this, that CHRMP is a competency-based HR certification. Uh, and there is a reason for me highlighting that, because if you look at departments, names have changed in human resource. If earlier it was being called recruitment, now it's increasingly being called talent acquisition. If it was being called training and development, increasingly it's being called learning and development or talent development, right? In fact, human resource management is being called talent management lately. I'm sure you would be. Why is that happening? It's because from a process perspective, human resource is now following competency-based norm, right? Uh, so when we talk about competency-based HR, we are talking about it becoming more and more tangible. So for example, if task-based HR was about, if we are talking about, let's say, somebody who has to interact, it would say that interacting with clients and customers, that is task-based HR. Skill-based HR would say good communication skill for interaction with clients and customers. But competency-based HR would break this competency area of communication into multiple elements, which is leading to the outcome of what is the behavior a person should show, against which recruiting parameters, hiring parameters, and other parameters can be created. For example, if you look at competence, and this is a very, very simple example. As I said, competency, we do 2-day, 3-day, 5-day workshops on competency assessments for organizations, right? So, but it's very, very important for them to understand. But just to give you a brief view, a quick view, if it leaves you confused, I'm sorry about this, but it's important that I quickly highlight this so that you have this understanding, and probably at some other time, or you can make use of our services. You can go to chrmp.com, look for a competency development certification, etc. That is something that you can go about doing. But when we talk about competency statement on communication, it is talking about tangible outcomes that human beings are showing for achieving the outcome that the organization wants in area of communication, right? So for example, when we are talking about communication, we are talking about clearly articulates ideas in meetings and presentation. We are talking about using of tools like paraphrasing and summarizing to understand client requirements. We are talking about facilitating discussion to positive contribution of ideas. We are talking about somebody who demonstrates tacts and sensitivity while communicating difficult message, which means can able to communicate difficult messages with ease, and also negotiates while preserving relationship. Now, this is an example of application of communication. And if look at, if these elements are there in an interview evaluation form, or these elements are there in a training need analysis form, or if these elements are there in a performance management form, then the way you would run HR as a process would change, right? It would completely change, because if I am a trainer and I'm told that train on communication skill, I can train on anything. I can train on grammar, because I may relate good English to good communication. But if I have been given this visibility by the training department that people are failing to get the client requirement well, and there is confusion in terms of what they say and what they get, then I know that I can use paraphrase and summarizing, and I can train them on these tools so that they are able to gauge these requirements better. In fact, if you are an interviewer and you are hiring somebody, then rather than just judging somebody on how a person is speaking, you can ask a behavioral question, a situational question, a competency-based question on how previously in their job they have gone about demonstrating tact and sensitivity while communicating a difficult message, and this would be much more direct and much more specific to the outcome that you are looking for in a candidate of whom we are aiming at choosing, isn't it? So very, very important that we understand that from a functional perspective, HR is a support function. From a process perspective, HR has evolved from task-based, skill-based, and competency-based HR. And competency-based HR is something that is also going to define the future. So one element that we really need to also learn is competency-based HR practices and systems, and we have to master them if we are looking for the future. Uh, or being relevant to the future of human resources professionals, right? Also, from a strategic HR perspective, the journey has been like this. I think if you look at, I told you that you had welfare officer and you had labor manager and you had personal management and you had human resource management, and now they say it's the era of strategic HR. Two things that is going to define where we are right now and where will we be in times to come right now. And this is HR being restructured in organizations and the evolution of human resource business partner model, right? And the second element is the use of data and analytics in human resource, right? These two things are going to redefine strategic HRM. It's going to redefine future of work for HR professionals, and I will talk about it and I will relate to it, right? So yes, very, very important for us to relate to. The journey has been like this. If you look at that, second industrial revolution, same time democracies evolved in the world, voting class emerged. So you had labor laws, and then to a great time, about 40, 50 years, it was about welfare officer and labor manager, and then it was file management and process management and personal management. And then it was about human resource management for a long period of time. And now it is strategic HRM, which is ruling the roost. And how exactly its strategic HRM is becoming more relevant in times to come would be for reasons like competency-based HR practices, for reasons like restructuring of HR department, and for reasons of data and analytics, and a lot of other things that's going to be used in times to come. So this has been the journey so far, and I would now also talk about how it would look in the decade ahead as we move ahead. But quickly coming to strategic HRM and expanding it for all of you very, very quickly would be the the move from organizational HR model to the traditional HR model to HRBP or the strategic model, right? So from a corporate HR model to HRBP model, or from a traditional model to strategic HR model, a lot of organizations have gone about restructuring their HR departments. And largely the restructure has been that in a traditional model, you had different verticals in human resource, mainly six verticals: recruitment, selection, training and development, compensation, benefit, performance management, employee relation, administrative, HR, etc. And depending on the size of the organization, these departments were either specialist verticals or generalist verticals. For example, if we are talking about a big organization where there are 10,000 employees, then each of it could have been a specialist vertical. But if we are talking about 100 people, 200 people, 500 people, 1,000 people company, then depending what would suit them and what would save cost for them, right, would be that you recruitment may have a specialist vertical, but training and performance and employee relation can be a generalist vertical. So different permutation and combination were possible in terms of division of work. If it is 50 or 100 people company, one or two HRs can do everything. So the whole idea of HR generalist evolved, etc. So this was the traditional corporate HR model that we are talking about, right? Now and it had its own limitations because it was mainly an implementer. And I mean, really, they have gone about mastering process here. They have gone about mastering outsourcing here. They have gone about mastering execution here. But if you look at what they have lagged, it's that this was never strategic, because business was constantly telling us what to do. But what was our role in business enhancement and better profits and better revenues was never defined well, right? And how we were supporting organizations and individuals achieve respective their goals, etc., was also not very clear. So there were limitations in here. But when we talk about the HRBP or the strategic HR model, then we have the HR here is divided into three parts, right? So if you look at the HRBP model, or if you look at the new strategic HR model, then we are talking about three divisions to the HR department. You may see various permutation and combination in different organizations. That's true, but I'm largely talking more in terms of the textbook way of going about it. Variations are possible, and it's important that variations happen so that the best solution for an organization can be achieved. But largely, if you would see, you would see these three divisions in terms of HR operations. Center of Excellences, which is COE, and HRBP as a vertical coming in. And when we talk about HR operations, we talk about everything that is back-end HR, everything which is process related, systems related, everything which is about file management and personnel management coming under one umbrella. So when it was about record keeping, time keeping, payroll, vendor management, background verification, compliance and labor laws, HR audits, travel, visa, anything that we are talking about, all of it comes under this whole element of HR operations and HR administration. And I think this leads to process excellence and process optimization. Because if this was separately happening at different places, right? It might be happening in training and development department, it might be happening in compensation department, it might be happening in HR administrative department. But now all of it coming under one umbrella, there was a lot of best practices sharing, there was a lot of quality, there was a lot of lead time, and number of steps being reduced in terms of how you were delivering efficient services. And it leads to a lot of time saving, it leads to a lot of process optimization, it leads to a lot of process excellence coming into picture, because there is one department. It does not matter which vertical and human resource it is looking at supporting, but it is uh, capable and at the same time continuously improving its caliber in terms of delivering efficient HR services with least time taken, right? So that is what HR operations and HR administrations did, or what you also call as HR shared services to a great extent. Anything to so this that was about back-end HR. When it come to front-end HR or development or strategy, then all of it came under circle of excellence. So when we talk about talent development, when we talk about talent development is nothing but learning and development. When we talk about compensation planning, when we talk about talent acquisition, when we talk about data-driven HR practices in terms of HR analytics, all of it came under center of. And this was important because developmental elements, developmental initiatives need strategy and planning and implementation and a particular way of dealing with it. Similarly, compensation or getting people in or taking database decision making, these are all important elements, and they all function as a COE by itself to be able to deliver best services and even able to develop customizable services for organizations, teams, and departments and individuals, right? So that was about COE. And then came in the HRBP, which is the third vertical within the strategic HR model. And in the HRBP largely became the intermediary between the organization and the HR department in terms of delivering efficient HR services, right? So this is how an organization planned. Organization, the top-notch guys sat and they decided on their organizational goals, and that gave way to departmental goals, and departmental goals gave way to team goals, and team goals was broken down into individual goals. So everybody had a clear idea of what their KRA, KPA, KPIs, etc. look like, and it was a top-down approach where organization planned something and it got broken down to from one organization level to department level, from department level to project or team level, and from team level to individual levels, right? Now, being an HRBP was about supporting teams and managers and individuals and departments in terms of achieving these goals. So for the first time, HRBP as a vertical within human resource got directly aligned with organizational goals. All this while it was some support role that we were doing. It was assumed that our doing that would lead to business success. But here, our KRA, our KP, our KPI for the HRBP vertical within the HR department got their our KRAs got aligned with business KRAs, right? So what we have to achieve is what business has to achieve, and this goal alignment really changed the perspective completely. So, for example, if I am in HRBP 1 supporting team A, and if I go to team A and I get to know what they are uh, chasing or what they are looking at achieving, and if I am able to, from an HR perspective, support them, then they achieve their goal, and if they achieve their goal, I achieve my goal, right? For example, I go to team A and I tell them, and let's say it's a typical outsourcing company where work has been outsourced from US to India, let's say, or US to Philippines, or US to Africa, anywhere, right? Outsourcing work that is there. And we have, and I go to the team leader and say, okay, what are your goals? And he says that I have to improve my CSAT score, customer satisfaction score. It is 3.5, it should be more than 4. How do I improve that? Because my team are brilliant with tech stuff, But when it comes to communicating with clients, they are pathetic. There is confusion over mails. There is so many issues. I don't know how to go about dealing with it. So now I, as an HRBP, understand that problem, that the person has to improve the CSAT score to 4 or 4.5 out of 5. So I go to talent development, get the best folks from there, or a vendor who can go about delivering it, bring them on table, bring the team leader on table, bring the reportees on table, develop a customized solution that caters to them, and I'm able to deliver that across, right? And really work till they go about achieving the CSAT score, because that is where my ratings would also be linked to, right? Or if I am another HRBP2 supporting team B, and that's a sales team, and if I go there and I ask them what are the issues that you are facing, and then I realize that there is a reimbursement policy that they have to go about filling things till 25th of the month, and 25th is month end, and people are pressurized with sales and etc., and people are missing on filling these details, and this is causing unnecessary issues and demotivation. And then I go to HR operations and I go to compensation planning, and I create a specific policy of flexible reimbursement only for that team. That's good HR services delivered, customized within the organization to teams, to individuals, and to everyone, which makes it easy for them to achieve their organizational goals, right? So this kind of setup is what has gotten us into what we call strategic HR, right? Not only that, in fact, let me involve analytics and database decision making also in here, because that's also part of the future that I'm going to talk about now. But if we talk about, let's say, for example, another set of people coming us, a project head coming to us and telling them that there have been 10 resignations in the team, get me 10 replacements. I go to HR analytics and tell them that does that project need 10 more people? And HR analytics goes there and does a workload analysis and realizes that there is 60% resource utilization. So basically, this assumption of 10 people here is wrong, which technically means that we are not now immediately start working on deadlines and timelines in terms of delivering back to business. It is about and imagine if those 10 resources are not hired and efficiency levels are increased from 60% to 70%. We not only save cost for the organization in terms of new hire and salary and a lot of other costs, but at the same time we help the organization be culturally more efficient, right? We create a fitter organization. So these are elements that are, I'm sure that in practicality, when you talk about organizations and processes and system and culture, things may be different and the structure may be different at different places. But this is what has given the strategic shape of HR that we are talking about. And it's important for us to understand that when we look at future, having this understanding is very, very important. Because if we do not understand competency-based HR, if we do not understand how HR processes and systems based on competency and measuring tools and etc. is done, then it's like, being introduced to a new technology without knowing the basics. Imagine if you were never introduced to Windows, if you never worked on 98 and 2000 and 2005 and 2007, then and suddenly if you were introduced to Microsoft 2020, right? What would you do, right? Or Excel, right? So it's important that we go about having this understanding, this base for us to understand the future, right? So it is a must right now. It is absolutely in caps, font size 41, must for all HR professionals to master competency-based HR, right? It is must for HR professionals to understand human resource business partner structures and systems, right? And how new age HR is being driven to relate to future of HR that's going to come. Otherwise, the gap would be too huge. If we are still, the change would be swift and fast, right? It would be swift and fast, right? So it's very, very, very important for us. And I would request all of you who are listening to check our HR certification, CHRMP Advanced HRBP certification, which fills this gap of competency-based HR and HRBP best practices, right? All bringing in together in all elements, whether it's a COE, whether it's HR operations, whether it's introduction to analytics. It goes about bringing those elements which are very, very important for. Though analytics is way beyond. So we just introduce it there, but a very, very well done certification in terms of making you understand HRBP. And so it's if you look at CHRMP.com, and if you go to mid-career and you look at HRBP Advanced, that is one certification that you must have to fill the gap of what's coming in future. Right. So very good. So this is what we have talked about so far. We have talked about some trends, and we have talked about current status of human resource, to now talk about future of HR, right? So we are ready now because we have understood the functional perspective of human resource, we have understood the process perspective of human resource, we have understood how strategic HR came into picture and what is driving strategic HR, and now we will talk about how HR is going to change shapes in times to come, which is again very, very important, right? So when we talk about future of human resource management, four future areas in human resource management that's gonna redefine how HR process and systems run. Not only that, are also additions to existing elements that I just spoke about, are the area of workforce shaping, the area of culture, the area of employee experience, and the area of data analytics. And these are four areas which would be giving way to new roles, new skills required by HR professionals, and new way of implementing HR within the business in terms of workforce shaping, in terms of culture, in terms of employee experience, and in terms of data analytics. And this is something that is important for us to watch out for, because if we are not watching out for, we are going to miss growth, we are going to miss uh, uh, enjoying the kind of work that we would be doing in times to come. So it is really important that we understand how these elements work, right? I would quickly talk about each one of it in a minute or two, so that you have an idea in terms of how exactly this is shaping up or will shape up in times to come. When we talk about workforce shaping, it's important for us to understand that workforce shaping, all this while, if workforce planning or manpower planning, terms and terminologies that you have gone about hearing, is about gauging based on business requirements, manpower requirements, largely for a quarter, for half year, for a year. If it's an organization which has really gone about planning well, then we have talked about, let's say, a 2-year plan, right? And that is where it ends, right? When manpower planning goes about ending here. But here, look at what we are talking about. We are not calling it manpower planning. We are calling it workforce shaping. Workforce shaping. And this largely is a scenario-based approach where we move along with technological implementation within the organization to gauge what would be required in not 1 year, 2 year, but maybe in next 3 years, 5 years, 8 years. Because that's how the implementation of technology would change the workforce requirements. Right? Are you getting it? For example, let me take, I was just before pandemic, I was in Europe and I walked in Amsterdam. I was walking across a bridge. It was a 16-feet bridge, which was printed out of a 3D printer, right? We are talking about in Middle East, in cities like Dubai and Saudi Arabia, etc., a lot of other places. We are talking about smart cities where entire buildings are being printed out of printers and being placed. Right? Is this going to change the requirement of construction workers in times to come? Yes or no? Yes, it will. Right? So if construction workers would be reduced, at the same time, you may need new workers who know how to operate these 3D printing machines. You may need workers who would require to operate a certain kind of cranes and certain kind of machines, which can go about fixing it up for the construction industry. I'm just giving you an example, right? Now, this is not going to change overnight. This may change. It may take 5 to 8 or 10 years in terms of this change to come through, which technically means that as we talk, if you know that a 3-year implementation plan for the organization is to have these kind of constructions being done by this kind of printing machine, and this is something that we would be using, and in 5 years we would be doing this, and in 8 years there would be a gradual way of how things would move. I as HR today should be able to gauge the way the organization would change technologically, and understand the workforce requirement of who would not be needed and what new would be needed, and what new skills would be required, and what new composition of workforce would be needed, and what would be the size of the workforce that would be needed, and I should be able to shape it as it goes. I should have that view. So workforce shaping from a strategic point of view would be a key element which would go hand in hand with organizational planning in terms of technologically upskilling the workplace, which is very, very important. So workforce shaping is a very, very important element for HR professionals in times to come in future. Another area which would redefine how HR is being done is something that we have spoken about a lot, which is about culture, right? And culture all this while had a link directly with the values, and to an extent in terms of how vision and mission of organizations work, but to great extent the values that organizations wanted its employees and organization as an entity to imbibe, right? That was the idea of culture, right? Culture would see a paradigm shift in terms of promoting and rewarding and planning and creating a culture which promotes behaviors which lead to job being done or work happening, right? So culture, if all this while it was about culture of transparency, culture of X, which has been achieved by a lot of organizations, and it has changed industries, and it has changed how things and elements have been happening in the world. Now it is about HR to create connect between culture and performance, and this journey has to be stitched well so that culture remains what it is. At the same time, it enhances itself in a way and project itself in a way where you you create a culture linked with performance, or culture which promotes performance, and this would be very, very interestingly created and implemented by HR professionals for organizations, and it would be much needed. Organizations would really need HR professionals who are able to do it, right? So basically, if it was about organizational development and change management all this while, it was about handling baby boomers and Gen X and Gen Y and millennials. These were the challenges. It's a different level of challenge that we are talking about, that organizations will face, and they would need HR department to do it for them, which is driving the new definition of culture within their organizations, right? The third element is about bringing in the element of customer centricity towards employees and enhancing their experience when they are working with the organization. Employee experience would be one area of human resource which would really, really have a lot of opportunities for future HR professionals, right? Employees working in organizations, right, should be treated as customers, as clients. You have to track NPS scores, whether I mean NPS is purely the measure of a customer being able to recommend your business to others or not. That level of happiness is something that we are talking about. And if you look at employee experience, then to create that level of centricity would be the idea of employee experience, and it would talk about three key elements, which is digital experience, which is social experience, which is environmental experience. So if you have been hearing of digital HR, if you have been hearing of other elements, and in fact we are also working on a curriculum for experience and digital HR. In fact, we have already worked, right? This is something that is gonna also be what we call is the in thing in human resource in times to come, isn't it, right? So three aspects of employee experience: digital experience, social experience, and environmental experience, which would talk about leveraging of technology, which would talk about a sense of community and collaboration, and we should talk about aesthetic and agronomic and other elements that matter in terms of designing the physical workforce, a workplace, or even a remote workplace, right, for employees, and this would be part of employee experience. And none the least, one of my favorites, something that I'm truly involved in, is the use of data and analysis and analytics. Right? There is a difference between analysis and analytics, actually, uh, uh, to help organization take better decisions using data, data-driven HR, evidence-based HR, right? Creating workforce insights where decision making becomes so easy for organizations because they know that they can absolutely trust the data, not the gut of the HR professional, or back the gut with data, which is very, very important. I mean, this is truly amazing how this is shaping up. So if you've heard of HR analytics, people analytics, etc., then yes, this is the area that I'm talking about. I am talking about this going to a different level completely, where right from organizational issues and problems in terms of absenteeism and attrition and employee turnover and employee churn and offer drop rates to talent acquisition challenges to learning development challenges that they are facing. Not only that, it is about which policy would work, what policy should shape up, how exactly all these, any challenges, any problems that organizations may face would be solved uh, uh, by looking at backing with data and its analysis, right? Very, very important is something that would also talk about that. You're already hearing it, but as I said, it would shape up to have a different level of data visualization and data implementation for HR professionals. Very, very important for us to understand and master this as well, right? Four areas in human resource which are key to how things will change. We also need to understand that these are four areas, and these four areas would require certain skills, right? So what are these essential HR skills that we need to learn, right, to be in the race or not to be in the race? I think it's important. The opportunity here is to lead the race, right? Because people who move swifter, faster, would be able to conquer or to be able to come up with amazing career strategies that would lead them to their career success and goal achievement, something that they have been planning, right? So when we talk about five essential HR skills that would be needed, what for the first skill that would be needed is HR and people analytics, right? Very, very important, right? You would have another skill which is design thinking, and another skill called critical thinking, which would be very, very important, right? Very, very important. Design thinking and critical thinking, and you should know about it, how ideation works, how critical thinking works, how solutioning works, right? Very, very important in terms of what elements we need to learn. Critical element for HR professional would be knowing people analytics, HR analytics, design, and critical thinking. Then there would be digital HR skills, which are very, very important, right? Another skill would be the way we interact with business is going to change. So all this while, if we are the implementer and business is telling us to implement, now for business to achieve the goal, we know and we understand that uh, uh, what business is telling or people involved in business is telling us may not necessarily be true, or there is a better way of doing it. So managing stakeholder and influencing them is something that would be a critical skill for HR professionals, right? Because now it's about collaboration in terms of achieving goals, not necessarily executing what is being told to you. So I'm not saying that we will be challenging authority, but we are together working for a defined goal for business, right? And unless we learn how to manage stakeholders and learn in terms of how to influence to create a buy-in, things the road would ahead for us would be tough, right? So that is another skill, and these are skills that can be learned, right? And then there would be strategic workforce planning, workforce shaping, which I talked about right in the beginning, a few minutes back, is another skill that is very, very important for us to learn. So these five skills is must for HR professionals in times to come. Key skills. These are key skills, right? Now coming to some future designations. A lot of it you would have not even heard of, or if some of you have heard it, it's wonderful. But if you look at these skills, very, very interesting, not skills, these designations, very, very interesting designations. I love some of them, love the way it's such cool designations. If I was talking to a millennial, or if some people are listening to this, look at this: HR data detective, work from home facilitator. One much more needed, isn't it? Like world has been working from work from home, so work from home facilitator. HR business continuity officer, right? Business continuity, pandemic, businesses were disrupted. You need HR input in terms of ensuring that the element of business continuity is there in everything, every element that we are talking about. Right? Chatbot and human facilitator. Think of it, chatbot and human facilitator. So you have smart chat box. In fact, some of the companies already have it. If you go and apply in a company, first few rounds are already being done by organizations. But how is that automated chat box interacting with you, right? I mean, as a customer, I'm sure you would have had this automatic chatbot experience, but you need a human facilitator which continuously work this chatbot and makes it better. So that's a designation that's in a human resource. HR algorithm officer, something again related with data and analytics, just like HR data detective, right? But to be able to create an algorithm, to be able to understand uh, the flow is very, very important. Human network analyst, another very interesting designation that we are talking about. Employee experience manager, employee experience manager, workplace environment architect, right? So you should be able to create a workplace. I talked about employee experience, isn't it? So when you talk about employee experience, when you talk about workplace employee environment architect, when we talk about director of well-being, this is about taking employee engagement to a completely different level, right? Employee enablement coach, genetic diversity officer. We are talking about global mobile workforce working, right? So we are talking about genetic, and then we have VR immersion counselor, right? So a lot of training that would happen, individual training, etc., would use VR, and a lot of things it's going to change. So these are the designations that we are talking about of future. Look at, just try imagining what the job descriptions would look like. Just try imagining what the job descriptions of these designations would look like. Try fitting yourself in those job descriptions, because that's when you would be relevant, isn't it, in times to come. So you need to do something today to be able to be relevant tomorrow, right? Or to be able to, not, again I say that if all of you are here, then we had hundreds of nominations for this webinar, but normally if 4 people register for webinar, 1 out of 4 would attend, right? Which means 25% of everybody who registered for this webinar is attending this today, right? So when we talk about that, you have taken a lead, isn't it? Right? That's why you're here, right? So it's about taking that lead, not worrying about whether I would be relevant for future or not, right? So yes, you have it in you, and that's why you're here. But to be able to move to the next level, it's important that we fix 2 things. We fix our current and we prepare for the future. Because if you prepare for the future, if you have these skills that I'm talking about, you have knowledge of these areas that I'm talking about, if you are improving your analytics skill, employee experience skills, other skills, then you are fitting, you would effortlessly fit into this. This would happen to you, in fact, right? You would not have to really plan and execute. When designations like this would become popular, there would not be people who would have present experience to fit into that. So they would look at relative experience and relative exposure and relative knowledge for people to fit into this, right? And you would be one of them. I'm sure of that, right? So this is where the future of HR is working ahead. And as I said, I talked about what a future of work in terms of a talent acquisition department may look like. And as I talked, a lot of it is already happening. So you would have, so look at this here. Talent acquisition is from, why do we call it talent acquisition? Why not recruitment? Because recruitment ends with the position being filled in, right? So if a vacancy is filled in, recruitment ends there. But talent acquisition goes beyond that. It is about proving the people whom you have gone about hiring, whether they have been able to achieve job success or not, right? Or they have been able to achieve productivity levels or not. So that's talent acquisition, because you have to prove that the people whom you have acquired are talent or not, right? So when we talk about this, look at future of work in the entire talent acquisition vertical, from automated job and candidate matching. And this is, I know of softwares which can look at 100 resumes and a job description, and better than human beings, select top 10, or as good as human beings, select top 10 resumes whom to go about sending an interview call for, right? So this whole recruitment part, the job matching part, or not recruitment, the sourcing part, right, to a great extent would completely be automated, right? And it would also work on data in terms of how many people we need to send, so that how so many people revert back, and our funnel is right in terms of finally having this position being filled in. Because if you send 10 people opening, doesn't mean 10 would revert, but you need 10 people to make that one choice. So whether it's 50 or 100, whatever, I mean, the whole maths is something that would be taken care of, right? Smart chatbots, I already talked about this. Interview bots for initial candidate assessment, completely automated initial candidate assessment. That is something that is possible. Assessments, candidate scoring against set competencies and skills. You can use gamification, you can use tools, you can use HR professionals and selectors, but it would be the choices can be to a great extent automated, and or AI and ML can be used in terms of creating these assessment levels. You can have text analytics and voice recognitions, elements like there is this whole idea of sentiment analytics. Even when if qualitative inputs have been given, you would be able to do those analytics and gauge answers in a better manner, right? You can remove errors in interviews through better text analytics and voice recognition. And this is something that HR professionals will have to work, and recruiters will have to work to better the system, so that they're able to get desired results for the organization. You would process automation right from sending openings to finally confirmations, to doing background verification. All of it can be automated, right? And as I was talking about, determining candidate success using AI and data analysis is something also that is possible, which means you will look at sourcing channel, which source that candidate is coming from. You would see uh, 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 education background, experience, companies, exposure, resumes, etc., hobbies, uh, uh, behavioral skills, motivational skills, other skills that the profile looks like. And you would be able to map that with people who have actually gone about being productive and creating job success in the organization, and being able to prove beneficial for the organization. And you would rework back that to sourcing channel, to education, to experience, to location, to gender, to number of things, right? And they would be able to give you a result that this is something that may work. In fact, while conducting behavioral event interviewing, you AI can gauge interaction by the candidate, and also, as I said, rate the answer in terms of how much true or false that answer may look like, in terms of how voice, how pauses, etc., are working across. So if you just look at how talent acquisition is gonna go in times to come, look at all these elements coming in, and there would be places where we don't need to work anymore as HR professionals, and then there would be places where we need to work with uh, uh, machines and technology for it to better itself, right? And there would be places where we need to drive it with technology supporting us in terms of being able to make better decisions, right? uh, this is not only specific to talent acquisition department folks, right? This would be true for almost all human resource verticals. You would see things changing, right? So apart from the new areas, uh, the existing areas would also completely reshape themselves, right? And this would require new skills and fitment into new areas, which is very, very important, right? So this is something that I wanted to talk about. But one question that I really, really want to ask all of you here and who are listening to me is, how ready are we? right? How ready are we uh, for this future, right? A very, very important question for us to ask ourselves, right? And I'm just asking it to all of you is how ready are you for this future? Because if you understand how things are shaping up, and that's why this webinar is important, and that's why I thank all of you for being part of this webinar, because what we have been able to achieve in this webinar is that we have talked about some trends, we have talked about future, we have talked about evolution, and now we have connected that evolution with future, right? So you, it's, and a lot of times when we talk about we end up talking only about future, but unless you do not understand the present of what has come up so far, you if you are not up to date with what's happening right now, it's difficult to connect with the future. So it's important that our planning focuses on two things, right? First is filling the gap between what I know and what's happening. And second is preparing to what's going to happen. If you do not fill this gap and if you jump in there, then that also might be an issue, right? And that may lead to uh, you figuring a way out by spending little more time. And time is precious today because uh, through experience we learn. That's very, very true. But with experience, what we lose is time. And if we have to meet our goals in life and growth in life, then we have to consider time very, very precious, because that is what would make us the youngest CEO and the youngest HR head in the or whatever you are planning and aiming for to be in life, isn't it? Right. So guys, I want to offer something to all of you, and that is what we call is um, CHRMP. I want to showcase something to you. In fact, that something that may be part of your journey in terms of uh, 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 preparing you for this, and that is CHRMP Academy, right? So what we have done is we understand that, so CHRMP is known for certifications. If you can see my screen, if you go to chrmp.com, you can see different certifications that would prepare you with the missing link and missing gap. So for example, when we talk about certifications, we have for people who are starting, we have foundation certification. For people who are experienced, we have HRBP advanced certification, something that I spoke about. If you look at specialization, we have HR analytics certification, Tableau certification, very, very interesting, important certifications. We have talent development, talent acquisition, competency mapping, BI, all these certifications are there. This is something that would fill the gap for you, right? But these certifications are needed right now because industry wants people who are certified with certifications like CHRMP in respective areas. But how do we help people prepare for the future? And this is something that has always been the challenge. And once we facilitators, we said, we thought of continuous improvement is the only way for you to achieve what we call is success in life, right? And for that, we have created CHRMP Academy. The beauty is that if you are a certification candidate, you can access through my courses all the certification content. But just in case you don't want to do a certification, you just want to learn continuously and have access to a knowledge base and have access to encyclopedia of human resource of what's happening right now and what's happening in the future. You can become members of CHRMP Academy. In fact, when we talk about members, we have individual members and we have organizational members as well, right? We have organizational uh, uh, members as well. I'll just quickly, we have members who are who are from enterprise solutions. So if you're an HR head who is listening to me right now, you want it for your HR team, you can take our enterprise license with multiple members. That is something that is possible. Or if you're an individual who is planning to have your growth, you can go about doing that as well. But let me showcase this to you. So for example, this connects people from various sectors, different countries, different places. and they you have your own dashboard, you have activity feed where you keep learning what's happening in so this is my dashboard. I was just going through some behavioral event interviewing. You can see people who are online right now. You can go about seeing what is happening in the uh, 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 community. You have activity feeds where we are talking about one or the other element, new blogs, new articles, new white papers that are being released, training effectiveness, 5 questions to ask. Not only that, you have events. Events are something that's happening again and again. For example, MS Excel for macros. We are talking about best practices sharing. So this is from community itself. HR professionals from different parts of the globe present something which is the best that they feel is happening in there. So look at the kind of exposure that we are talking about. Employee engagement, we are talking about different topics that keeps them going. Not only that, we have resource hub. Resource hub is like encyclopedia of human resource, where you have facilitators recordings and documentations in different areas of human resource. Look at this. We are talking about HR operations, job analysis, communication, competency mapping, leadership, performance management, tech sessions, templates, talent acquisition, employee experience, digital HR, anything and everything that people may want to learn is something which is accessible here. You can make requests, you can connect with other HR professionals, you can join forums, you can connect with, as I said, with and have discussions related to your career with HR, with analytics, with trends. All this is something that is accessible to you as part of CHRMP membership, right? And you can go about uh, uh, joining this membership by I would share this link with you. You can go about joining this membership or making your team join this membership uh, by clicking uh, uh, on CHRMP Academy membership, learn more, right? So once you click on this, you can see your monthly plans and your yearly plans. I would say that if you feel that this is something that is pretty good, you have learned something in today's webinar, go for yearly plan because you get to save a lot, and you can go about subscribing, right? And just in case you want your entire HR team, you can click on contact us and fill in the form, and our team would get back to you, and you would have a lot of exposure in terms of various things. You would have tech sessions, you would have soft skill sessions, you would have templates, you would have network access, you would have a number of things. That is something that you can go about doing. So go ahead and make use of this membership uh, uh, for continuous growth and continuous learning, right? That is something that I would want all HR professionals to do so they grow in their respective careers. Learning has to be continuous, right? As I say, uh, um, there would be, even if you spent 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour of going through one topic, forwarding it a bit, going back, attending a live webinar, and X and Y and Z, you're updated, you have learned something, right? That's the way to move forward, right? That's the way you can go ahead and you can do things. So as I said, and just in case you want to do any certification, you have courses you can enroll for, but continuous learning in terms of preparing yourself future, I think CHRM Academy is the place which would ensure that you have uh, all the knowledge that you need in terms of answering this very very important question, which is how prepared you are for the future, right? So I have shared the link for CHRP membership uh, in the chat box, and anybody who's interested for their respective teams to take up this membership. A lot of organizations are already on board with us in terms of enterprise memberships, but just in case you are looking at your organization to come on board, please contact us. And as an individual, if you want to do it, just take an annual membership. It is the minimum that you can pay for continuous growth and development.
To learn more about CHRMP membership, click on the icon above.